Okay, so same thing on the mailings tab. You've got your list of the object, which in this case is mailings. In the middle, you've got alternate views for mailings that are categorized, so you can see your unsent mailings, any mailings you've got scheduled, your sent mailings, and your tests, just by clicking one of those. So to start my new mailing, I'm either going to create a new draft, or I'm going to, in this case, edit an existing one. And what I'm going to do first is just walk you through creating a basic mailing. Then I will first walk through the basic mailing, and then we'll come back and get into a little more detail about some of the more advanced customizations you can do. So this is my draft, and we walk you through the steps. First step is compose, which basically means set up everything that makes the mailing. Then you're going to pick who receives it, then you send it. And the first thing you see here is the basic section and the subject line. And one of the things we've made really easy is subject line testing. So I can do a test of 2 or more subjects just by hitting the blue plus and entering my text here. Same thing for preview text. I can test that as well by entering in a different A versus B, or just use the same one and test my subject line. And ActionKit, however many subjects you select, ActionKit is going to distribute that subject line at random between the recipients of the mailing. You set your from line. These will be something that you've got predefined. You can also do a one-off, and you should just make sure that you're aware of the from line rules. If you do that, which are basically make sure to use your domain so that it doesn't hurt your email reputation. You can set a separate reply to if you'd like here. And notes again here are for internal tracking. So if you've got 50 mailings going out saying save the black-footed cat, you'll know what this one's about. Tags here are a little bit different than for pages in that they have nothing to do with the user. So when you tag your mailing, it's really just for organizing the mailing so that later when you're looking at your full list of mailings, for example, from the Browse All screen, you can sort them, you can filter them by tag. So I could say, show me all the mailings I've sent out that are related to wildlife. So let's see, what else here? Oh, wrapper defines your header and footer. So you're going to want to select the correct one for the mailing that you're sending. You guys have a number. It looks like they're mainly country specific and language specific. So if you weren't sure, check in, but your wrapper will set the correct language and logo and appearance for your overall mailing based on the location that you're emailing. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute of other things you can do with wrappers, but this is the default is you're going to have a wrapper that defines the header and footer, and the content here is a blob of HTML that gets inserted between those two. So that's my body. And the other thing I'm going to point out that I selected above is my landing page. This presumably would be the page that I just created. In this case, it's the black-footed cat page. And selecting it does two things. It associates the page in the mailing. So in the database, I'll have a way to see which mailings were associated with this page. It also means that I can use snippets that are specific to the page. So then we're looking at the actual body. And as you can see, I don't have much here right now. But the snippets come in particularly handy for personalizing your mailing. So they let you do a few things. You've already seen the first name snippet. So that's basic. I'd insert that. There's some other standard user snippets that we've exposed because these are the most commonly used, but you can also guess from this what some of the other choices might be. And I encourage people to play around with snippets, but if you do this, you must test, because if you guess wrong, your mailing will be broken. So this is one of the reasons that you want to see a number of proofs. But I've got my snippet here for that. The other snippets that are shown here are ask specific. So they're related to the request I'm making of my users. So I might say, please tell page targets. This says senator and representative, but it really just means any target. And it's going to know who the targets are from your landing page. So please tell my targets to stop doing that bad thing. He, she, they, does, do. We have gender built into the database, so using these snippets will get the pronouns and tenses correct, so the mailing actually reads as if it's written to the person knowing who their targets are. And you can see here there's a live preview that renders as you go. And you can also change this. One thing that you'll almost certainly see at some point early on when you're creating mailings is when you're first creating a mailing and there are no targets associated with it, it may not find someone who has a target, so it may show a slightly unclear error here. We've got down to fix that, but what we can do here is just enter the user ID in for someone who you know has a value if you just want to see how it's rendering. Other snippets you might want to use under pages, page targets, we've got the social media information for your targets. That is currently built in for federal U.S. targets, but one thing that we'll be adding is the ability to upload that for custom targets, so you can have a point-and-click way of adding that. There are other ways that you can do that currently, which I'm going to talk about in a minute when we get to the more advanced stuff. And what else? Oh, the other thing that you may want to use is the landing page. So this is going to insert the page that I selected here. So this is a very basic mailing, and you can see when it's rendered, we append a lot of gobbledygook to the URL. That gobbledygook is important because it lets us track clicks, opens, and actions from this mailing, and also it's the way that the users recognize when they land on the page. So once I've created my mailing, I can check out my advanced options. The main one here that's relevant is web viewable. I'm not sure if this is something you guys do, but if it's incorporated into your template set, you can have a link there that says, click on this link to view this mailing in your browser. So that could be a best practice for reading on devices or whatever. And this is, by default, the mailings are responsive. There's nothing in there, so you can't really see it. But then your second step, once you've created the mailing, is targeting. And for targeting, what we're going to start with, let's say I don't have this selected. This is going to mean email to everyone who's mailable in my database. We automatically exclude anyone that you shouldn't email because it will hurt your email reputation. So to narrow it down from the broadest all mailable category, there are a couple options for that. First one I like to look at is the special criteria. This is just a shortcut for you. So if you're doing a targeted, an ask for a targeted page, you can say just target people who live in the districts, and those can be legislative districts, custom boundaries. They can be any district that you have defined as you saw in the target setup. Beyond that, you can select from the point and click options. So if we're sending this petition out, we might say, let's exclude everyone who already took action on the black-footed cat. And maybe I want to send this to people who I know have an issue interest in wildlife. So tags are an option for that. I can also then limit by geography. I can look at other information. For you guys, one that probably is often relevant is the language. So you're going to want to select the language here and specify the language that matches your wrapper. And one thing that to know about your mailings is you may have some default targeting built into your instance overall. So it's possible that when you come to this page, you're already going to have some selections in place. You just want to make sure that you're following your organizational protocols in terms of changing those. But those are built in to protect you against errors, basically. So these give you a sense of all of the point and click options. The other thing that you can do that's essentially your escape hatch, you can write a SQL query, or you can pick something from the query library. And these are reports that have been saved in a way that exposes them to the mailer. Most of the ones I've got in this demo instance are ones that we've written, but they give you a sense of the kind of things that can be used for targeting. So you can have a definition of superactives, for example. This is one we built in. You can change it. You can do some customization even right here within the query. But once you pick something from the query library, you add it, and that targeting is going to be applied. Oh, and the one other thing, speaking of targeting being applied, that I like to show you because I can never describe it correctly unless I look at it, is how your targeting selections are joined together. So if I pick 4 tags and a language, how those different criteria are joined together, you can hit the little gray question mark here, and it's going to bring you to the section of the documentation that describes the logic. So especially if you're doing a complicated set of selections, this can be helpful for reminding you what's going to happen. So let's say I've selected my targeting here. Since I'm doing the subject line test, I'm going to want to set a limit because I want to have some people to send the winner to afterward. The way that the limit works is it's applied to the set of people who meet the criteria here. So this is going to select 10,000 people at random of my users who care about wildlife and who haven't taken action on the black-footed cat. Since this is my test instance, there won't actually be 10,000, but we'll ignore that. Then my final step is proof and send. And here, this screen is really just for double checking your work. Gives you another chance to look at the mailing, check your count. I usually just do a logic check like, hey, does that number look reasonable? And then you can also check that your criteria are correct. And you can send yourself proofs. And proofs are rendered copies that are going to go to your end users, but you can have 1, 5, or 20 of them selected at random and sent to you first. So you can do one final check for errors that you might not have noticed before you hit the send button. And then once I'm ready to hit send, I can either schedule it for later, so I could send this at 5 a.m. tomorrow, make it recurring if I'm setting up a recurring mailing, or send right now. And if I send right now, I get the mailer haiku. Oh, wow, and this is a new one. Okay, these haikus haven't changed in a while, so I'm pretty excited about the new haiku. And you guys can write your own haikus as well. But anyway, the haiku is there to give you a second to contemplate, basically because the mailer is really fast. So once you hit send, you may still be able to stop a mailing if you find that there's a mistake, but it's good to pause and really think through that you've covered everything. Then once the mailing is sent, let's say it's been out for a couple hours, I'm doing my subject line test. I get to what I'm looking at right now by clicking on the subject for a sent mailing. This is showing me the standard built-in report. This one only has one subject, so I pulled up one that has the test. And you can see here we've got the results, the positive results, your opens and actions, and your negative results, your unsubscribes and people who marked you as spam. So you can look at those, make sure that the one that appears to be a winner didn't actually have a lot of spam complaints or unsubscribes. Select the winner, and the way you do that is by hitting the subject of the winning variation. That's going to tell ActionKit, copy this mailing, keep the winning subject, exclude everyone who got the test, and you're ready to send to the rest of your audience. So that workflow is fully integrated for subject line and preview text testing. We're not going to get into other mailing testing, but there is an option for testing any element of your mailing head-to-head. While I'm here, though, I want to show you, you've got two choices for looking at the numbers. You can see the summary, and this gives you a visual indicator of of how statistically significant your winning variation is. You can also just see the raw numbers.